Hi everyone, it's Melissa. Welcome back to another installment of Pop Culture Osmosis. This is a series where I read a very famous book and try to guess what will happen in the book based on pop culture references. I am reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I am excited because I've never read any Jules Verne before. Also, I feel extra confident with my predictions this time because I just feel like I've seen this story referenced so much in media that I just feel like I know it better than some of the other episodes of this series that I've done. So here are my predictions. So I think in this book there's like I don't know if they call it a submarine in the book, but there's like a vehicle, a submarine vehicle called the Nautilus. Prediction number 2 is that the crew of the Nautilus discovers some sort of unknown sea creature, almost like a sea monster. Prediction number 3 is I think Captain Nemo in this is fairly like crazed or obsessed, and I'm almost getting like Captain Ahab vibes from Moby Dick. Although, what was written first? That wouldn't make sense if this was written before Moby Dick, now would it? But I feel like Captain Nemo was based on Moby Dick. Which brings me to prediction 4, and like this is a spoiler alert for Moby Dick if you don't want spoilers, so just like skip this prediction. But because I'm pretty sure that Captain Nemo, I have a gut feeling that Captain Nemo is based on Captain Ahab, I think that everyone on board the Nautilus is going to die except for the narrator, whoever the narrator happens to be. And then my last prediction, number 5, is that a giant squid attacks the Nautilus. I'm not sure if that's what causes people on the Nautilus to die, but I'm pretty sure that happens because I remember as a kid watching the movie Sphere, and Samuel Jackson's character was obsessed with reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and he had a fear of squid because of that book. And I remember a lot about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and like a giant squid. Anyway, I'm so ready for the weekend. So ready to start reading this. Let's go.
There are all of these reports of this like sea monster from a bunch of different places and different ships that have spotted it, and it's like bigger or longer than like any known whale or anything. So that's basically the beginning of the book. This is how we're kickstarting the story. So I don't know if the Nautilus is going to go looking for it. I don't know. Listen to this. These satirical writers begged their learned fellows not to give the lie to nature by acknowledging the existence of krakens, sea serpents, Moby Dicks, and other inventions of mad sailor men. So this must have been published after Moby Dick. So I'm feeling more confident now that like some of the things in this book are going to be based on Moby Dick. So we'll see. This sea monster has been like downing ships or damaging ships at the very least. And it's become quite clear that it's not a sea monster, that it's a vessel. So it's the Nautilus. The sea monster is the Nautilus. Our narrator, whose name is, it's like a professor, Pierre something, had to look it up. Pierre Aronnax, or Aronnax, he's French. Anyway, he's boarded this vessel. They're on an expedition to try to find this sea monster. Well, they think it's like a giant narwhal. That's what they think they're looking for. Anyway, there's a harpooner on the ship who's Canadian, and in true Canadian fashion, I was like, oh, a Canadian character. Whenever Canada's mentioned, I think Canadians are just like, oh, people know we exist. Anyway, his name is Ned Land. He's supposed to be French Canadian, but that's like the least French name I've ever heard. Anyway,
that's where we're at right now.
Somehow, they still don't realize that this, what they think is a narwhal, is made out of metal. And they're getting fairly close to it. They've been throwing harpoons on it, and the harpoons have, like, bounced off as if they're hitting a hard substance. Like, how do you not realize that this, like, narwhal is made of metal? Well, I assume is metal. Anyway, they're just dumbfounded, and at nighttime it, like, glows with, like, electric looking light, and they still don't realize that it's not a freaking animal. Anyway, you have to suspend a lot of disbelief for this to work. Anyway, they've caught up to it and are trying to harpoon it and didn't work, and then, like, the blowhole or some, like, whatever from this creature slash what I'm assuming is the Nautilus, like, it like shoots a bunch of water, and Professor Aronnax is, like, pushed over the railing into the ocean. So these people had to literally be on top of the narwhal to realize that it wasn't a narwhal. So, like I said, the professor went overboard, and then his, like, servant companion guy, like, jumped in after him, and they're, like, floating, like, in the middle of the night, like, they can't find the ship. And then finally they're saved by Ned Land, the Canadian. He says, "My dear professor, this particular beastie is made of sheet iron." So they literally had to be standing on this thing to realize that it's not an animal. They've been brought inside the Nautilus and are prisoners, more or less. So Captain Nemo is like, you are free to kind of, like, come and go around the ship as you please. But they can't leave. Nemo said, well, you attacked my vessel, and isn't it my right to take you as prisoner? And Aronnax is like, well, it might be your right, but no civilized man would do this. And Nemo says, well, I'm not a civilized man. So I'm about halfway through this now, and I haven't really checked in lately because basically nothing is happening. So I think the last time I checked in, they had met Captain Nemo. They're essentially prisoners on the Nautilus. And then it's basically just them, like, well, the professor just recounting the different, like, sea life. It's almost like his scientific diary in parts. So, like, they went out, they put on kind of, like, underwater diving apparatus, and, like, explored the seafloor, and it's just, like, long lists of the different coral and, like, sea life and fishes and whatever that the professor is noticing, but there's nothing super adventurous about it. It's just like, oh, there's so many interesting creatures, here's a list of them. And they got permission from Captain Nemo to explore this, like, island. It was, like, the first time they had set foot on land for, like, 2 months. So they took this little, they have, like, this little pod or something that, like, detaches. Anyway, so they got to the surface, and they took a canoe to this island to explore, and Ned Land, the harpooner, like, really wants actual meat. He doesn't want to eat fish anymore. He wants to, like, catch something and, like, have a steak, basically. So they have this, like, hunting expedition, which sounds like it should be exciting, but it's just them wandering the island, and again, the professor just, like, recounting the different, like, vegetation and bird life, and it's like, I don't want to read a naturalist diary. I want to read an adventure story. So that's where we're at. Not terribly exciting at all. So I'm a bit disappointed. We're going to continue on, and hopefully there will be some giant squid in the near future, or sharks, or something mildly exciting. Stay tuned. So Captain Nemo had confined the professor and Ned Land and the professor's servant Conseil to their quarters. And when he brought them on board, he already warned them that there may be times when they would be confined to their rooms with no explanation.
And so he told the professor that, hey, remember I said that? Like, it's about to happen. I'm going to confine you to your rooms, and I'm not going to explain why. And they were all okay with this. They all said, like, okay, like, I guess that's just how it is. But then for some reason, Captain Nemo just decided to drug them. Like, he gave them supper and said, going to confine you to your quarters. But he drugged them and then had, like, I guess the crew of the Nautilus move them into their rooms. Like, they were already complying. Like, so yeah, like, that's normal. Yet more lists of sea creatures. I never knew coral could be so boring. Professor Aronnax and Captain Nemo have just walked through the lost city of Atlantis. And that's it. That's all that happened. There were countless pages of descriptions of the different sea life, and then they saw Atlantis, and they looked at it, and then Captain Nemo beckoned the professor back to the Nautilus, and the next chapter they're on to something else. Like, literally nothing is happening except them going and looking at different things. Like, bring on the giant squid. Like, something needs to happen in this book besides, like, naturalist descriptions of different, like, coral and fish and seaweed. I'm over it. Actually, one thing that has happened is Ned Land is trying to hatch an escape plan. This can really only happen whenever they are close enough to shore, and not just any shore. It has to be, like, you know, somewhere in Europe or something, not just some deserted island. So they have to be close enough so they can basically hijack the little boat thing pod that's attached to the Nautilus, so that they can get to shore. The professor is kind of like, he gets why they should probably escape, but at the same time he's like loving all of the stuff he's learning, exploring the ocean, and he knows, like, once he leaves he'll never be able to find Captain Nemo or the Nautilus again to, like, get this opportunity again. But, like, that's the only thing that's happening, is Ned Land basically trying to get them off the Nautilus. And I just wish there was more Ned in this book, because it centers the professor, but the professor is the most boring character out of any of them. Like, he doesn't really have any good motivation to leave or any, like, drive to leave, so, like, he's not very interesting, and all he's interested in is, like I've said, copious long descriptions of sea life. Ned is the one who's interesting, this French Canadian harpooner who just wants to hijack the pod and get the hell out of there. But he's in the background, like, all the time, and a harrowing escape would be what this book needs right now. But, like, I'm not holding my breath. I just finished a section that was more kind of, like, thrilling and adventurous. They're exploring the Antarctic, and something happens where they get kind of, like, caught in the ice, where they get surrounded and they can't make it back to the surface, and the Nautilus has to resurface every so often to replenish their air reservoirs. So they're going to suffocate if they can't get out of here. So they're trying to figure out a way to escape these, like, 4 walls of ice. And more than that, the water that they're in is slowly starting to turn to ice. So their space is getting smaller and smaller, and they're in danger of getting crushed by ice. They finally make it out of there. It's all very, like, down to the wire. And now they're moving up to, like, more tropical waters. And now we're back to the professor listing friggin' species. Like, can we just go back to the energy of the previous section that was more adventurous and thrilling? Anyway, another thing I wanted to mention was Captain Nemo, because I haven't really talked about him much. When we first meet him
in the book, it's a strong start. And I kind of felt like, yes, he's going to be this eccentric, wild character. And he's really not. He's kind of a nothing character. And he is very secretive and like will go off. He's had them confined to their quarters before and like drugged them to do so. And like, that was weird. But on the whole, he seems pretty normal. Like their encounters with him on the whole are normal. He doesn't really have a bunch of eccentricities, and he doesn't have like this obsessive type of personality that I would have expected. He is, all in all, quite a bland background character. The squids are finally here. The Nautilus is like caught in one of the squids' jaws, or anyway, they're stuck right now. But they're not actually giant squid, they're giant cuttlefish. Which, like, whatever. If you don't know what a cuttlefish is, I'll put in a picture. They're in the same class as octopus and squid. Maybe they're also in the same order. Anyway, they're closely related. Giant cuttlefish just doesn't have the same ring to it as giant squid, right? So I'm wondering if maybe it's just this particular translation, maybe other translations have it as giant squid, even though what I'm assuming has happened is that it was giant cuttlefish. I don't know what cuttlefish is in French, but maybe cuttlefish sounds a little bit more foreboding in French. I find in English cuttlefish kind of sounds cutesy. So I'm wondering if at some point one of the translations changed it to squid because it just has a different connotation, I guess. But yeah, I'm wondering if just like the English translation changed it to squid. Except this one didn't. It's a giant cuttlefish. Anyway, I'm going to finish this and see what happens. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. The Nautilus is in the grasp of this, like, giant cuttlefish. I'm just going to call it a giant squid, because I just can't. And they try to, like, open the hatch because they want to get out and try to remove this creature. And its tentacles, like, dive into the opening. It pulls out one of the crew members, like, it's happening. Where was this energy the rest of the novel? I really hope that I'm right and this squid just destroys this whole ship. That's it? This like battle with the squid lasts like a page and a half, not even. Takes up one of the crew members and presumably kills him. Then it takes up Ned Land, but Captain Nemo chops off its tentacle. And then that's it. And then it's just like, and now they're on to the Gulf Stream. I have been waiting for this giant squid scene for 240 pages. And then it's over in a page. And so help me God, if the professor starts listing off species again, I'm going to lose it. Did you know that when they're traveling the Gulf Stream, Professor Aronnax sees lots of living creatures? He sees some rays, some bony fish that he recognizes as gray gobies, dipterodons with silvery heads and yellow tails, several specimens of salmon. This ending is baloney. Ned Land and Conseil and the professor finally see an opportunity to escape. They're off the coast of Europe somewhere. They're not exactly sure where, but they're like, we have to leave now. And so they get in the little boat thing to leave. And as they're trying to like take off the bolts that attach them to the Nautilus, they realize that they're heading towards this like giant whirlpool and they're going to get like sucked in. And like, that's all very exciting. But then the end is like, so they're getting sucked in. So the bolts break free. The Nautilus is going towards the whirlpool. They're getting sucked into the whirlpool. Then the professor strikes his head against something and he goes unconscious. And then the next chapter is basically just like saying how no one can really know what happened that night. They don't know how they escaped the eddies of the whirlpool, how they ever came out of that gulf. Just the mystery. That's just like, I don't know, that's just lazy writing, is it not? That's just lazy.
And they don't know what happened to the Nautilus, if they ever were able to like get away from the whirlpool or if they got caught in it and trapped and like if they all died. I don't know. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching this vlog more than I enjoyed reading this book, because I don't think it was very good. But I'm glad I like know the story now. Anyways, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll chat soon. Take care. Bye.
And if you make it to the end, you get a bonus kitty cat.